Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 368. So Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team petitioned the court for a new bail hearing. And her legal team wanted that bail hearing to be conducted in a private setting out of the light of the public. Well, thankfully, Judge Nathan slapped that down, and this bail hearing will, in fact, be held in front of the public. Now, the question was, when is that bail hearing going to happen? Well, we have a little bit of movement on that front today, as Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team request a date a few days before Christmas, and the prosecutors are okay with it. So it looks like we have a date coming up, as long as the judge signs off on it a few days before Christmas, and we will see if Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team have pressed on the right buttons and pulled the right levers to get her sprung during this new wave of COVID-19. Now, you all know where I stand on that. She shouldn't be released. It's not like she has comorbidities or anything like that. If she contracts COVID-19, chances are she's going to have mild symptoms, if any symptoms at all, and she's going to get over it and be fine. It is not the sort of situation that would necessitate her being released from custody, in my opinion. If she's released, then everybody else should be released, right? All these other people that are waiting on trials, let's release them all. Let's just dump out the jails and release everybody at that point. Because it's not like she has any sort of ailment that makes her into a high-risk person in regards to COVID-19. And furthermore, if there is such a huge outbreak, such a huge second wave or third wave or whatever you want to call it of COVID-19, what makes anyone think that she'd be any safer staying in some hotel in New York? Wouldn't she have access to the public, and wouldn't it be less of a controlled environment than the prison? Now remember, even though COVID is, there's an outbreak of COVID at her facility, she is not on the main line. She's already basically quarantined. She's in solitary confinement. She's away from the rest of the inmates, and the only people that have access to her are the guards, obviously, and prison staff. So she's already in basically a quarantined environment where she has hardly any access to other human beings. So what makes anyone think that her going to some posh-ass hotel is going to work in her favor when we're talking about not coming into contact with COVID-19? She should not be granted bail, in my opinion. She should be kept incarcerated, in my opinion. And the COVID-19 outbreak is not enough for her to get out of jail. It is just not enough. Now, if she had, some sort of comorbidities, she had emphysema or, some other disease that is really bad for you if you catch COVID, then maybe a conversation could be had about moving her somewhere or whatever, right? But that's not the case. This has nothing to do with COVID. COVID is being used as a lever and a vehicle for her to try and get bail once again. And it's rather transparent and rather obvious what's going on. Now the question becomes, is the court going to give in and let Ghislaine Maxwell go home while literally hundreds of thousands of other people, maybe even millions of other people, are sitting around in jailhouses at this same very moment with no prospects of being released until their trial, and if even then? How is it that she should be the one that gets released, while all these other folks have to sit in the jail and rot? I'm sorry, but when it comes to somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell with no comorbidities, I don't want to hear anything about COVID-19 and how deadly it's going to be for her, because it's not. All right? Not for her. Okay, chances are she's going to be fine if she catches it. We're not talking about airborne Ebola Zaire here, folks, okay? Let's all come back down to reality for a couple of minutes and try and think with a clear head, okay? She should not be getting bailed out on the basis of COVID-19 being a huge problem and a chance that she might catch it. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I hope that Judge Nathan sees through that BS. Our article tonight is from CNBC.com. The headline, Alleged Jeffrey Epstein Madam, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, general all-around scuzzbag and bipedal serpent, Ghislaine Maxwell, wants bail hearing just before Christmas. This article was authored by Dan Mangan. Ghislaine Maxwell wants to get out of jail. And before the holidays, if possible. Hey, you know what? I have a lot of things that I want too. I would love to have a house like she had in New Hampshire. I would love to have the house that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had in Colorado. But guess what? I'm not getting any of that. So I really hope that you don't get your wish either. And I hope that you're spending your Christmas and your New Year's in the Hooskow. Because you have earned that, in my opinion. All of these years avoiding justice, all of these years avoiding even coming forward and speaking on the record. All of these years, you've been able to live the high life while everybody else who you've come in contact with pretty much has felt the disastrous waves in your wake. So I don't care if she wants to be home for Christmas. It's ridiculous, all right? She played the game, and now she has to pay the price. Maxwell, who was accused of procuring young girls to be sexually abused by eccentric money manager Jeffrey Epstein, pedophile, on Friday asked a judge to schedule a hearing on her forthcoming bail request for December 21st, just 4 days before Christmas. I'm wondering if she's hoping to catch Judge Nathan in the old Christmas spirit, right? Hoping that Judge Nathan is feeling a bit jubilant around the holidays and therefore grants her request. Meanwhile, I'm hoping that Judge Nathan is more Ebenezer Scrooge come this hearing on the 21st, and I hope that she laughs him out of the courtroom once again. The British socialite, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, general all-around scuzzbag and bipedal serpent's lawyers, in a letter to Manhattan Federal Court Judge Allison Nathan, said that prosecutors have agreed to that date and to a series of deadlines beforehand for related legal filings. So it looks like the prosecutors and Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team have gotten together and they've pinned down and hammered down some dates to get this ball rolling for the bail hearing. Because remember, as of yesterday, I believe, we weren't even at that point. They had petitioned the judge, but we didn't know if the hearing was going to occur soon or in a few weeks. But now we got that pretty much locked in. All Judge Nathan has to do is sign off on it. And if the prosecution and Ghislaine Maxwell's team both have signed off, I can't see why Judge Nathan wouldn't be okay with that date. The letter came a day after Nathan rejected defense lawyers' requests that she hold a conference with them and prosecutors outside of the public eye on issues related to the privacy of people who would co-sign a possible release bond for Maxwell if one is granted. Yeah, negative. There'll be no more transparency in this case. If people want to bail Ghislaine Maxwell out and people want to put their name down on that dotted line and say, hey, look, we're co-sponsoring Ghislaine Maxwell, we're co-signing for Ghislaine Maxwell, and we want to make sure that she gets out of jail, then that's totally fine. This is America, right? She's allowed to go through the proceedings and try and get bail just like anybody else is. But at the same time, these people shouldn't be shielded from their involvement. If you want to get involved, well, guess what? You're going to be involved. And then if that means public scrutiny, then that's what it means. You're the one that's putting up collateral for somebody who is charged with some heinous-ass crimes. And we're not talking about some gray area crimes here, okay? We're not talking about somebody who stole or embezzled and that was it. We're talking about somebody who was involved in some of the most draconian type of crimes, if these allegations are correct. And this is the sort of person who I don't care about people's privacy if they decide to dip their toes into this. If they decide to put their names down on a legal document, then that legal document becomes a matter of public record. That has already been established by the Second Appeals Court. So, their request to try and get this private was laughable at best when they made it, and still laughable now, to be honest with you. Maxwell, who has pleaded not guilty in the case, faces long odds in getting the judge to agree to set bail pending her scheduled trial next summer. And I agree with that. I don't think that anything really has changed as this bail hearing approaches on the 21st. Now, who knows? We still have a few weeks before we get there, but as of now, I can't see any sort of circumstance that has been brought to the judge's attention that would make Judge Nathan decide to grant bail after already and emphatically denying it. If she gets out, does that mean that she still doesn't have access to that she gets out, she doesn't have access to all of her powerful friends or passports or any of that jazz? I'm sure the government has seized her passports, but again, remember who we're dealing with. Does she have another one stashed somewhere? Who the hell knows? And that's why I don't believe that she should get bail. This is one of those crazy cases, folks. Usually, I'm on board with people getting bail before they have been prosecuted and before they have been found guilty or not guilty. I'm usually in favor of people getting bail, except when they're powerful politicians or powerful people like her who can easily skip out. She has the means, she has the finances, and she certainly has the contacts. So somebody like her should not be bailed out. She should not be bonded out. And I believe that the court system has been pretty firm so far with their decisions as far as bail goes in regards to Ghislaine Maxwell, because she is a huge flight risk, and I don't care what anybody says. Somebody like her who is this devious, this cunning, you really think she's going to stick around when she knows that the chips are down and things are really starting to heat up? Or is she going to try and cut out and go hide with one of her rich friends? If her friends are willing to co-sign and bond her out, you really think they're not willing to hide her? Hell, what's been going on for this past year? On the heels of Maxwell's arrest last July, Nathan denied her first request to be released on $5 million bond, saying that she represented a substantial flight risk because of her holdings of French citizenship. France does not extradite citizens and her significant wealth. And that's exactly it, right? This isn't your typical situation. This isn't, the normal kind of case that is coming before the judges or in front of a court. We're talking about high-profile people that were involved in high-profile crimes, and these are the sort of cases that very rarely find their way into court because these people are able to manipulate the situation and never even stand trial for the most part. So yeah, she is a huge risk at running. She is a huge risk to dip out on bail. $5 million bond? That's chump change. You really think she cares about missing out on $5 million? The judge also cited serious charges, which could land Maxwell, 58, in prison for up to 35 years if she is convicted. And remember, I believe that these are just the Hold'em charges. I think that we have more coming down the pipe. I think we'll have that superseded indictment at some point, and it's only a matter of time that this becomes a RICO case, right? How many times are they going to call it a criminal conspiracy and then not charge anybody else? You can't have a conspiracy of one. That's not possible. So there has to be other people involved in this. There has to be other co-conspirators. And the question is, when are we going to see them charged? Because it's way past time for all of these people to be charged, for all of these people to go under to be under oath, and for all of them to put down what they know on the record once and for all. In addition to charges related to allegedly recruiting and grooming several underage girls for her former boyfriend, Epstein, you mean former co-conspirator, former co-boss, in the 1990s, Maxwell also is charged with perjury for allegedly lying during a deposition for a lawsuit filed by an Epstein survivor. Look, if Ghislaine Maxwell is opening her mouth and talking about Jeffrey Epstein, it's a pretty sure bet that she's BSing, lying, and deceiving. She has never been honest about Jeffrey Epstein. If she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, talk about laughable. If she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, why hasn't she ever come forward? Why was she hiding? Why was she ducking and dodging? Why didn't she offer up her testimony during the trial or even after he was arrested the second time? She didn't do that because she was completely and utterly involved, and if she exposed him, she would be exposing herself too. And that's what it's all about, right? Self-perseverance. It's not like they're friends. It's not like Ghislaine Maxwell cares about other human beings. No way. She cares about self-preservation and making sure that she is taken care of. Since her first bail hearing, Maxwell has been locked up in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. The federal lockup's grim conditions are radically different than the luxurious venues where she and Epstein once socialized with former friends, including Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, as well as with Britain's Prince Andrew and other wealthy individuals. Well, look, there's no doubt about that. Bologna sandwiches, paper clothing, and a whole lot of sitting around. A lot different than driving your submarine around or flying your choppers all over the place or hopping in the cockpit of the Gulfstream and taking a little jaunt, isn't it, Ghislaine? Talk about a shock to the system. It's like dropping somebody who's been walking in the desert for 10 hours into a freezing cold pool of water. It's that kind of shock to the system for Ghislaine Maxwell in the new circumstances she finds herself in, the living situation she finds herself in. Because guess what? That's what happens when you engage in this sort of behavior. You end up in a situation such as this. And all of your power, all of your wealth, all of your connections, it should not matter. This should be the end result for anybody participating in a sex trafficking scheme. As of last week, Maxwell was in quarantine because of her exposure to a jail staffer who tested positive for the coronavirus. She tested negative for COVID-19, prosecutors said in a court filing. Yeah, there's no doubt she didn't have it. They tested her, and she was clean. And she probably has a better chance, like I was saying earlier, of not contacting it, being in quarantine where she's at, than anywhere else. They say don't go out, stay home, don't have contact with anybody else. Well, this is the ultimate social distancing, right? Her attorneys have repeatedly complained about the restrictions placed on Maxwell, saying they are stricter than those for accused terrorists and that her ability to prepare for trial is being negatively affected as a result. Oh, give me a break. Worse than terrorists? I highly doubt that, okay? Terrorists end up at that high security detention center in Colorado, Flomax or whatever the hell it's called. Terrorists end up at Guantanamo Bay. Ghislaine Maxwell after she's sentenced, after she's convicted, if things go that way. She's going to end up in some probably low-level or mid-level security federal prison. And while she'll be in prison, she certainly is not going to be living the same kind of life that a terrorist who is convicted in this country would be living, okay? Stop it with the hyperbole. In a court filing in late November, Maxwell's lawyers griped that her sleep was being disturbed every 15 minutes by the flashlight of a guard checking to confirm that she is breathing. Well, guess what? These girls that you abused, I'm sure that they have reoccurring nightmares of it, and I'm sure that their sleep patterns have been screwed up, and I'm sure that they have lost plenty of hours of sleep in their life. So guess what, Mrs. Maxwell? Suck it up. Furthermore, I don't even believe that that's occurring. I don't believe that a guard's walking by every 15 minutes and blasting her with a flashlight in the eyes. Give me a break. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, which runs that jail, has faced stiff criticism since August 2019 when Epstein died from what has officially been ruled as a suicide by hanging in the cell of the federal jail in Manhattan, where he was being held on child sex trafficking charges. Yeah, that's just a certain factoid right there, right? Big time fact. Jeffrey Epstein certainly killed himself. I mean, right? That's the narrative they pitched us. Nothing points in the other direction. And if you believe that, well, you're a conspiracy crank. These people are insane. These people are literally insane. I say that if you believe the official narrative, you're gullible. You're naive. We're going to believe these people? The same people who we see on a regular basis work outside of the law when they're supposed to be upholding it? And I'm speaking about the Department of Just Us right now, by the way. How many shady moves, shiesty moves do we see them make on a regular basis? And we're going to believe their narrative? Mr. Big DC himself, Bill Barr, Darth Barr, that's who you want me to believe, huh? Fat effing chance. Epstein's death came just weeks after his first apparent effort at suicide by hanging in that jail, where he was being held after another judge rejected his request to set $100 million bail. Imagine that. Dude wanted to put up $100 million and the judge told him F off. And the first suicide attempt? Debatable. No evidence of that either, but he was in a cell with somebody who is being charged with, triple homicide, 4 homicides? Yeah, a pillar of the community. The type of guy that you want to put one of the top prisoners in the prison system in a cell with. Who made that decision? Because that person should be fired. Or, at the very least, he should be demoted to laundry, to where his only job and his only decision is to what socks he should be pairing. Because the person who put Jeffrey Epstein in a cell with Nicholas Tartaglione is an absolute moron. And it just so happens that the camera was facing the wrong cell, that there's no video footage of that night. I know. We'll just believe the narrative. He attempted suicide twice. Tartaglione just sat there and watched him the first time. And then afterwards, when Epstein was already semi-unconscious, he dove in to save the day. What sort of hallucinogenics do you have to be on to buy that sort of bullshit? Because I'll tell you what, folks, it would probably take about, 10 caps and 8 stems for me to get that faded to believe this bullshit. 2 guards who were supposed to be monitoring Epstein and a number of other inmates in a special protective housing unit on the night of his death were arrested on federal charges in November after prosecutors said they tried to hide the fact that they failed to monitor the detainees. Oh, that's all fine and well, and if these guys were negligent, they should lose their jobs. And if they broke federal laws, then they should be charged like anybody else. But if you think I'm going to accept you giving them the bag and expecting them to hold it, while everybody else gets off scot-free, all these co-conspirators don't get arrested, but these two prison guards are facing felonies, and you think anyone's going to accept that? You think anyone who's following this case and who is going batshit crazy every time you idiots make another mistake is going to accept any of that? It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Everybody who was at fault in this case, everybody who engaged in the abuse or who was complicit in that abuse by acting as a member of the criminal enterprise, must face felony charges, especially if these two guards are facing felony charges. Those guards, Michael Thomas and Tova Noel, are accused of signing multiple false certifications that they did required head counts of inmates and performed walking rounds. Now, hold up. They're in trouble for federal charges here because of signing multiple false certifications. What about all of the financial deals that were signed by Epstein and Indyke? So Indyke isn't being held to the same standard as these two guards, huh? Why is Indyke being held to a different standard? Why is Darren Indyke not being held to the same exact standard as these two? They've signed false certifications. He signed bad deals. He went and had 97 transactions at the same Wells Fargo for $7,500. That doesn't raise any alarm bells with anybody? I mean, it is just beyond me. Absolutely beyond me that the only two people besides Maxwell that are facing charges right now in this whole entire ordeal are these two prison guards. Thomas and Noel instead browsed the internet and appeared to have slept for about 2 hours the night Epstein died. So, again, I'm not going to jump on board with scapegoating these two. Sure, were they negligent? Absolutely. Were they moronic for falling asleep at their post? 100%. But where was their boss? Your boss don't come and check on you for all those hours? What's he doing? What is he up in the break room watching Jerry Springer or the Donahue Show? What is he doing or she doing? And how are they not held responsible for the actions of their employees? Anyone who's ever had a management job knows that the buck stops with you. I was on vacation one time, and one of my supervisors in the sports book forgot to sign somebody's W-9 form, right? A payout form. And while I was on vacation, I was called by my boss and read the riot act, even though I wasn't in the office. Why? Because it was my job to have my employees trained correctly. And even if I did have them trained correctly and they messed up, the buck stops with me. That's what happens when you're in a leadership role. You don't pin it on your employees. Sure, they get in trouble too. They might get written up or whatever it may be, but you don't pin the whole damn thing on them. There is no leadership at the Department of Just Us, and certainly there is no leadership at the Department of Corrections. And I don't see any hope on the horizon, folks. There's no white knight riding in to save the Department of Just Us. There needs to be a reckoning in Washington. And we really, really, really need to, maybe audit all of these institutions like the FBI and the whole entire Department of Justice, and maybe mass firings. And bring in a new crop of people who haven't been there for 10, 15, 20 years, and people who are just interested in pursuing justice. Because right now, it's all about personal gain, it seems like. And the left arm never knows what the right arm's doing. And at the same time, you're having high-profile inmates like Jeffrey Epstein die in your custody. So, forgive me if I'm not willing to buy your BS narrative. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow morning, and we'll pick back up where we left off. I hope you all have a great Friday night, and if you're going out tonight, please do not drink and drive.